A question by Lee.
Firstly, congratulations. I think you are underplaying the importance of this fossil and particularly its morphological diversity, and I think it's a huge contribution to our understanding of movement in and out of Africa. I had two questions, if I might, Mr. Chairman, very brief. One, I didn't hear, have you estimated or attempted to a cranial capacity or at least a relative brain size to other sort of frontals like that?
I guess it is not so possible to do it, but it is a very small specimen. I have the cast with me if you want to look at it. And this is very small, like something between the Manisi and the Jogodian fossils, but with its enlargement of the skull, it could be more closer than closer to the African Homo erectus, which are around 1 million years, as I said. Yeah, but we did not estimate the cranial capacity. I guess it is not possible.
And did you include the Olorgesailie frontal in your study?
Yeah, it fits well too.
Really?
With this group. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Professor Dunham.
Could you talk about the similarities or differences between Kotibas and Yunxian and Jokutian?
Yeah, we are a little far from Turkey, but yeah, with pleasure. I know the Yunxian fossils because I dedicated my PhD. It was quite a nightmare because they are totally damaged, you know, with the high plastic deformation, so it was complex. But in my opinion, I'm confident with a difference, big difference between the Yunxian, including the Langshan Gongongling hominin, which are very distinct from the Jokodian fossils, mainly by size, but also with the morphology. Because, for example, in the Yunxian fossils, this is an interesting point because this is the older Yunxian and Langshan fossils are the oldest ones in China, but we do not have all the Homo erectus features well known as, I don't know, sagittal keel or angularis torus. We do not have at all. So this seems not as derived as the Homo erectus, generally speaking, but very different from their size. So for me, it is two groups, two different groups. I don't know, population, species, or I don't know which level, but there is a clear difference, yeah.
Professor Braga.
Thank you, Amélie, for your presentation. I have a question, and I'm sure it's not, you don't have an easy answer to that, but did you try to investigate the age of that specimen in terms of physiological development? And I'm thinking of maybe, but it will require to build a large database, maybe the thickness of the various parts of the vault. Did you try to have a look?
We did not go deeper, as deep as this request. You're right, we can try to do better. Now, just we have the suture closure, the sinuses, the frontal sinuses, some print of pachytony on the parietal. So some features which sound that we have a young adult, but yeah, if we can go deeper, we'll be pleased to do it with you or with specialists who can help us in that way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Alam Seged, please.
Merci, Emily. I find also your presentation interesting, but also I secondly that it's a very important contribution which you may have underplayed during your presentation, but it's good to be
Thank you.
here. My question is regarding the paleobiogeography and then your idea of the second expansion. could you expand on that and tell us why you chose a second expansion rather than, say, they could be part of the first expansion but remained in Turkey and they are the younger versions? Could it be that also?
Yeah, I think that the main result is the difference between the Turkish fossil and the Manisi, because we can expect that we are very close, geographically speaking, so that we can expect more similarities between the two populations. But you are true. You are true. We have a time gap, which is important. Of course, so a lot can happen dealing with evolution during this time between 1.8 for the Manisi and at least 1.2 or maybe 1.6 towards Kojabash. So they are different, or they evidence different evolutionary history, so this is an important point. And the fact that we can lump together the Dmanisi and the Jacobian Homo erectus from China and generally speaking Asia, it is something important because it enables us to follow the path from the Dmanisi to Southeast Asia. So that is something important. So, of course, this is an open question. What happened between Dmanisi and Kojabash? We have at least 200,000 years or more, 500,000 years maybe. So what happened? Did they, is it something which derived, I mean the Turkish fossil derived from the Dmanisi fossils, groups? It could be the one hypothesis. Or is this Turkish fossil evidence another expansion from Africa? And because in our cladistic analysis, it is closer to the 1 million year African Homo erectus, such as Buri and Buya, I think, we think that maybe it is more this lineage that we have to follow from Africa towards Turkey, maybe towards Europe, because we are earlier in time. I mean, it is around 1 million, 1.5 million years. So that is why we can imagine that it is another expansion linked with the African Homo erectus, which are around 1 million years.
Professor Coppens.
Well, to talk about LMCGET, I have been very interested by this discovery, only for an obvious reason. You know, in our mind, out of Africa means just one immigration, which cannot be true. So as soon as the way is open, as soon the environment is all right, climate is all right, for the people to go from Africa to Asia, or from Asia to Africa. That's the reason why I wrote back. Why not several immigration from Africa 2 times as it is, for the moment, demonstrated in a way by this discovery. So I mean, in my mind, out doesn't mean one, and often, you know, it's easier to think that it's only one time and then bye-bye Africa. So it's more complicated than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Yves. Professor Berger?
I was just going to add to the concept of the other, I think what Zareh was alluding to, the possibility of a stasis, the idea that you can have an expanding pool and there's going to be an edge of it, and it's a remnant of an archaic form that is not undergoing the same evolutionary stresses that are going on in Dmanisi or further to the east, and such as that, just as a third hypothesis possibility, because I think sometimes we include a sort of conceptual idea of migration as movement, as opposed to expansion and entering into different zones that have different evolutionary effects.
Yes, if I can. Brigitte.
No, just maybe it's a difficult question for you, I don't know. But do the fauna give some ideas about these migrations? Do you have data about migration at that time from Africa, Inter-Asia, Europe-Asia, whatever?
Yes, it is too early to answer because we are working on that topic, but the different spots are not numerous. I mean, we have a scarcity of data, so it is not easy, but we are working on that, yeah. Thank you.
Professor Haile Selassie.
Hi, Amélie, I just want to ask you about the archaeological record at this site where you have this cranium. Is there any archaeological record? Because I'm just thinking about, like, if you had some archaeological record, it could actually help in figuring out whether this was a second wave of migration at 1.5 or not, because we know that the Dmanisi Homo erectus did not take the Acheulean culture with you know, the whole population. But at 1.5, we know that Acheulean was already full-blown in Africa. So if the Turkish Homo erectus had actually migrated for the second time, it's possible that they might have taken the Acheulean culture with them. So if you had some record of archaeology, that would actually help figure out whether this was a second wave of migration or they came from Dmanisi down south.
So, if I can add my comment, I would just like to highlight one point that I think we tend to overlook a bit. What we put into Homo erectus covers a huge span of time. I mean, we are talking about something that maybe appeared in Africa around 2 million years ago, more, that is represented from East Asia to all the south, the southern part of Eurasia, Africa, and that existed maybe until at least 300,000 years ago. So I think we completely overlook the diversity and the complexity of this group. I think there are probably much more to come. And so, of course, as paleoanthropologists, we have a few points in which we make lines between these points and we say that's the story. I think the story is much more complicated. There is a lot of extinction. There is a lot of these groups. The Dmanisi, we speak about them like our ancestors, but who knows? I mean, this group, this very population probably had no descendants at all. And so I think we should always keep this in mind when we provide scenarios about how many out of Africa events and what happened to this population and etc. I think with Homo erectus, we have a lot to come probably through future discoveries. Yeah.